It's time to make Jesus Christ the center of our life, the center of our job, the center of our sports, the center of our work, and the center of everything. Welcome back to Spiritual Strength. I'm Gene Zanetti, your coast-to-coast spiritual coach from Spiritual Strength, building athletes for Christ. An athlete for Christ needs to know the way, show the way, and go the way. And that's what we're all about, knowing the way. We want to know what true Christianity is, learn and defend the true faith. We need to show the way. That means living out our faith in the world. And we need to go the way, growing in personal holiness and devotion. All three of those things: spiritual strength, building athletes for Christ. Make sure you're sharing these videos with friends. Make sure you're getting it out there. We love doing it. We love this great time together. We're able to share the gospel and the messages of Jesus Christ. So last night at my monthly Opus Dei recollection, had another great meditation from Father Bob, my spiritual director, and he spoke about a mystical experience that Saint Josemaria had back in the 1930s. So while he was doing the consecration during the Mass, and as he lifted up Jesus in the Holy Eucharist, he heard in his head, he heard the Lord say to him, "When I'm lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men to myself." Okay, so you remember that gospel verse as he lifted Jesus up. And obviously that was a foreshadowing of Christ's crucifixion, right? But in this sense, Saint Josemaria, of course, taking nothing away from the literal meaning of that passage, Saint Josemaria also had an internal feeling of what that meant for him. And what that was is that men and women in ordinary work, ordinary secular work, at our jobs, while playing sports, while hanging out with our friends, while being husbands and wives, while being friends, by walking around strangers on the street, that Christ and the church would be lifted up above all things so that Christ could truly be the king of our entire lives. And that's what we're called to do. We're called to be other Christs in our life. So you're supposed to be Christ in your job, in your sport, or at home, around your friends. There's no separation. It's not that I'm living a Christian life in church, and then when I step out into the world, I do whatever I want. You don't segregate. It's always together. So you think about the hypostatic union. Jesus was fully God and fully man together. He wasn't half God and half man. He wasn't 3/4 God and 3/4 man. He was fully God and fully man. So that's what we're called to be. We're called to be fully Christ in our life and fully live our own secular life, whatever it is that we're doing, right? So what does that look like? An attitude of joy, an attitude of love, greeting people with a smile, a friendly hello, being a warm face in other people's lives. It means bearing wrongs patiently. Times where we feel slighted, made fun of, someone took a low blow or a cheap shot, and this is something we're all working on, certainly I am, bearing it patiently, offering it up as a mortification, as a penance for God, offering up our humiliations, all of our shortcomings. It means getting the truth on the record when need be. When you have people in a group, maybe friends or a family discussion, and people are bringing up things that are immoral, or whether it's an immoral law or immoral things that people are doing, you don't have to go on this big tirade about this is what you have to do and that's not the, but getting it on the record, getting the true faith, the stance of the true faith on the record, right? The truth has a right to be heard and has a right to be spoken. So speaking the truth with love, with humility. It means being Christ in our life means sometimes mortifying the flesh, fasting, penance. Friday, being that today's a Friday, it should be a day of fast, a day of penance. Doesn't mean you're only having bread or water or only 3 meals, but there should be little mortifications in our meals. The timeless tradition of not eating meat on Fridays, that's a great thing to uphold. I'm not saying I always do it, but that's a good thing to get in the habit of doing again. I'm looking to get back into that now myself. So far, so good today. What else? Anything else could just be giving up the salt on your meals today, or not having sugar in your coffee. Even these little mortifications that we could do, that we could offer them up, that we could unite them with the suffering of Jesus, and it also helps us grow in virtue because we realize that, hey, we can't always say yes to our desires. Just because we feel like doing something doesn't mean we automatically do it. And the way we build that muscle, with God's grace, of course, is through penance and mortification. So remembering, Fridays are traditionally a day of some kind of penance. So do it. It means, in our relationships at home first. Sometimes it's easiest to be kind to strangers, right? But the people that we're with on a daily basis, we all know one another's buttons. We all know each other's little peckadoodles. So it's real easy to be impatient with the people who we're with the most. So it's important that we remind ourselves this is the time that we're called to be Christ. Okay, this is the time that we're called to live out our Christian faith, patience with one another, love, a joyful face, a warm smile, willingness to help whenever possible. Just any time, whether it's work, whether it's school, whether it's sports, whatever it is, any area of your life, if people need help, jumping in, get in there and help with joy. Right? What does St. Paul say? We cry with those who cry, we laugh with those who laugh, really being there for the other person. And this is something I've been trying to do more, that getting in the habit of when you're with other people, when you're with friends and family, stop talking about ourselves. Ask about them, right? Are you the person who walks into a room and says, hey, look at me, here I am? Or are you the person that says, there you are, look at you, you're special. How's your day? How's your family? I got to get way better with that. I want to get better at that. With God's grace, I will. That's another thing. Just always put it on the other person. Our job as Christians is to get other people outside of themselves, not make it about us, but get the other person speaking, get the other person, hear about them, hear about their life, and love them, right? So building those friendships. So real critical. Again, back to St. Josemaria's vision, or his inner locution, where he did the consecration, lifted up Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, and he thought back to the gospel passage. When I'm lifted up, when I'm lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men to myself. Obviously, Jesus predicting his crucifixion, but also just a message that we need to lift Christ up to the very center, to the top of our life in everything that we do. There's no separation. Doesn't mean we're talking about faith or religion or God all the time, but it does mean that we are living Christ. We are living as Christians all of our life. Easy to say, or simple to say, not easy to do. So let's support one another in this journey. I know you guys being there, that helps support me too, that helps pull me through. Let's be there for one another. And let's be Christ, see Christ, and live Christ throughout our life. Let's lift him up to the very top, the center of our society, the center of our lives, and the center of our hearts. God bless you. God bless your families. Make sure you're sharing this with all your family and friends. And we'll see you soon.